Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra video. In this one I'm going to give you my speculation and my, preview as we head into Legend of Korra Runes of the Empire Part 1. I did my preview and speculation for Imbalance Part 2, and because we have two comics coming out basically within a week of each other, it makes sense to obviously do the kind of previews pretty much one after the other as well. So Imbalance Part 2 is coming out May 14th, 2019. Runes of the Empire Part 1, as you can see there, May 21st, 2019. So just a week apart between two brand new books. I wonder how that's going to work. It's going to be an exciting couple of weeks. I maybe question if it would be better to maybe spread them out a little bit more to ease the weight to the next books, but that's a whole separate topic. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the preview pages and the descriptions that we have for Runes of the Empire Part 1, and also the description for Runes of the Empire Part 2, just to give us a little bit more context about what's going on here in this Kuvira-centric book. We do have one new preview page that I haven't talked about yet. It seems to be the first page of the book. It adds on to preview pages we've seen previously, but we'll get to it. So we'll start with the description here. So of course we have the Runes of the Empire Part 1 cover, which is very, very interesting just by itself. Of course, Kuvira, the most significant character there, but also, you know, the complete team avatar basically there as well. And also the Order of the White Lotus kind of prison there as well, so that's kind of where Zahir, I think, is being kept. So it kind of almost begs the question of, like, are we going to get to see, like, Kuvira and Zahir interact, or is this where she's kept before her trial? Those type of questions. But that's just the cover. So the description is here. Korra must decide who to trust as the fate of the Earth Kingdom hangs in the balance. On the eve of its first elections, the Earth Kingdom finds its future endangered by its past. Even as Kuvira stands trial for her crimes, vestiges of her imperial ambitions threaten to undermine the nation's democratic hopes. But when Korra, Asami, Mako, and Bolin don't all see eye to eye as to the solution, drastic measures will be taken to halt a new march to war. So immediately very exciting of just, you know, Kuvira standing trial, and then obviously what they're suggesting there is one of the higher ups left in the Earth Empire continues it on basically. As the Earth Kingdom is having kind of elections to determine their new, president basically. And you can see just how kind of crazy things are actually going to be. We'll quickly cover the Part 2 description here. What will it take to stop a war? King Wu's dreams of peacefully transitioning the Earth Kingdom into a democracy are in danger when Commander Guan throws his political hat in the ring, hoping to subvert the new system from the inside out. But playing fair was never part of his plan. Guan and Dr. Sheng are using terrifying new technology to cement Guan's win. In a desperate attempt to save the Earth Kingdom from falling back into the dark days of conquest and empire, Korra and Kuvira convince an old friend to return and take the former commander on in the polls, but will it be enough? So the important thing here ahead of the preview pages is Guan and Dr. Sheng are obviously two characters we're going to be dealing with, as I suppose more or less our kind of villain pair. They're basically going to be, the heads of what's left of the Earth Empire, and as you can see there, they are going to get involved in the elections here, hoping to win things in the right way. And then significantly on the cover, as we can see here, Su Yin and Toph, but also Kuvira. And if the first book's about her trial, why is Kuvira in the book with a helmet no less? So clearly it gives you an idea that, like, okay, Kuvira's not just going to be like, oh, you're found guilty, that's it, you're in prison for the rest of this. You know, there's going to be a more action-centric aspect to this for Kuvira. So that's the main thing to talk about there. So we'll start with the preview page here. So this is the first page of the book. This is from the normal Penguin Random House website. They give you this preview. It's literally just, you know, the very first couple of pages of the book, including like all the credits and stuff. But we do get the first page here. So, Earth Empire Re-Education Camp Gao Ling. Now, Gao Ling is an interesting one in that that is Toph's hometown. That's the like Bei Fong, you know, are the sort of noted Earth Kingdom family, noble family, and that is where their home was in Gaoling. So that's just an interesting location. That it's an important location just to have in mind. It is a re-education camp, which we of course know a little bit about. This is where they keep you know, people who go against them. Specifically, at least some of them deal with mainly like firebenders and waterbenders, and just people from those nations who live in the Earth Kingdom, but the Earth Empire don't like that. So that's interesting. So we get here, please tell me you made some progress since the last time we spoke. I'm getting better responses from the subject's commander, but that's not why I'm here. Then enlighten me, Dr. Sheng. So this page confirms to us that that is indeed these characters that we're dealing with here. From the part 2 description, these are going to be our kind of people in charge of the Earth Empire. What could be so important that you had to interrupt my morning ritual? The radio operators just heard from our forces in Republic City, and I believe this is where we bring in these 2 pages. I think there's probably a page in between, or something like that, or maybe 2 pages in between. Just trying to get a sense of this. You know, the radio operators just heard from our forces in Republic City. Well, why didn't you say so? Okay, so yeah, I think this is the next page. Yeah, it was just a little bit of an awkward kind of transition. But anyway, why didn't you say so? I assume Kuvira and her mecha giant dealt the United Forces a crushing defeat. I'm afraid not. Kuvira surrendered to the Avatar. She ordered all Earth Empire officers and soldiers to lay down their arms immediately. And he's obviously very frustrated by this. Throws the kind of razor blade in frustration out. Victory was within our grasp. How could Kuvira turn her back on the Empire like that on us? I don't understand it either. You said you're getting better responses from the subjects. That's right, but continue our experiments. Yes, sir. So this means we're not surrendering, and, you know, that's it. At least in this very early section. So the first couple of pages are just setting up that Guan is not accepting Kuvira's surrender, and he is clearly still organizing this section of the Earth Empire. So this kind of sets up this threat that Kuvira, you know, had the loyalty of everyone, but not everyone's going to agree with her making such a decision as to just surrender on all accounts, basically. So that's just an interesting one to talk about. The other thing there is referring back to some of the descriptions that we had there, mainly the part 2 description here. You can see here, Guan and Dr. Sheng are using a terrifying new technology to cement Guan's win. And then they talk here a bunch of different times about responses from the subjects, the experiments, and then here on the first page is mentioned as well that she also says it again, getting better responses from the subjects. So what exactly is going on here? What type of doctor is Dr. Sheng? It's clearly specific experiments being done on people, and given that it somehow relates to like voting and stuff like that, I'm kind of wondering, is it some form of like brainwashing or you know, coercion type thing to convince them to like vote for Guan in the election, and that's how he is going to seem like the surprise victor or something like that, depending on how exactly it goes. I think that actually makes a lot of sense, that Kuvira would go down the giant mech route, where someone would take a more kind of mental warfare approach. I can't really see it being anything beyond that. I suppose the fact that they refer to it as technology rather than just like a specific experiment, like I suppose what did they eventually come out with at the end? Is it some sort of a thing they can just like fire at people to convince them to, you know, vote for Guan, or what? Is it a weapon? That's an interesting one to speculate on for sure. But that's about as far as we can really go with that section of things. We know that at some point they're obviously going to set up as well here at the end, can they convince an old friend to return and take the commander on in the polls. I think a lot of people lean towards the fact that would probably be Su as the most likely one. in that here is a supposed more legal way that Su might be more on board with for actually getting elected into the leadership position in the Earth Kingdom. She may be all for that, whereas I suppose the whole issue with Kuvira really came about because Su didn't want to just kind of usurp power just given to her just because. I think that's what makes the most sense, but if it's the return of an old friend to do this, Su, we know, is in part 1. She's here on the cover for part 2, so can you really say it is the return? I'd be shocked, like with Toph on the cover here, I'd be really shocked if it was Toph that they were suggesting is going to be the new leader, just because it doesn't really fit the character that she is at this point in time. So who are they actually talking about here, really? Korra and Kuvira convince an old friend, so it is specific to them talking about that. And with Kuvira, like, we don't really, I suppose, characters that we know that like she would know about, it kind of has to be Su Yin, who's like the kind of main kind of connection between the two of them. But you know, that's just, you're really talking about the wording a lot here specifically. But I think that's about as far as we can go with just the speculation on Guan and Dr. Shang. I suppose with part 1 specifically that we're talking about, it is going to be interesting to see just how much of a focus that there is on here, and that they're obviously going to set up the idea of like, okay, elections are coming up in the Earth Kingdom. They're going to establish, I assume, get to the point of Guan deciding he's going to run, and then part 2 will cover what he's doing to make sure he gets the victory. We'll probably be also get introduced to maybe the other candidates that are running for election as well. And maybe that's where we might bring up the idea of like, is Su Yin gonna run or what, that sort of thing. But that's just some speculation on that front. I think we'll bring in here the main preview pages that we got. So when the book was actually announced, and it's interesting to note the date on this, October 1st, like we got preview pages the second that this book was announced, and it was all the way back in the start of October. So a good part of this book has been done for a very, very long time. But anyway, here are the main preview pages that got people so excited for this book, including myself. So this is the first section that we get, probably introduced to Kuvira. We don't know how far into the book this is or anything, but either way, we get narration here. This is probably Kuvira's introduction here, just because they do give her the kind of inner monologue here, and it feels sort of like an intro. I yielded to the Avatar. I gave up my empire. I surrendered my freedom. The people I once considered family hate me, but that isn't enough for them. And we get here, she's on trial. By executive order of President Zhu Li Moon, this special tribunal is now in session. Now those in power want to humiliate me. You stand accused of crimes against peace. During your reign as the leader of the Earth Empire, your transgressions included refusing to turn over emergency powers granted to you by former President Raiko and King Wu, numerous wars of aggression throughout the Earth Kingdom states, presiding over inhumane prison camps, invading the United Republic, a sovereign nation, and the use of spirit energy as a weapon of mass destruction. How do you plead? And she says, I'm sorry for the harm that I caused to the people of the Earth Kingdom and this city. I truly am. But this tribunal seems all too eager to list my offenses without giving any consideration to my achievements. Please enlighten us. After the fall of the Earth Queen, the kingdom fell into chaos. When no one was willing to step up, I brought back order. I dragged an ancient culture out of the Dark Ages and modernized it. Everything I did for the greater good of the Earth Kingdom and its citizens. How do you plead? Not guilty. And we get, of course, Su Yin, very annoyed with Kuvira because of everything that happened. Not guilty. The whole world knows what you did, Kuvira. What are you trying to prove? Don't turn your back on me. And she says, I know I hurt you and your family, but you all turned your backs on me long before the Earth Empire ever existed. That's a very telling line, but we'll get to the analysis once we finish going through the pages. That's a lie. I gave you a home. I provided for you, but I was never really part of your family, was I? You attacked Zhaofu, you almost killed my son, and have apologized numerous times. When will you see through your anger to forgive me? That's what you don't get. Being sorry isn't enough. You need to take responsibility for what you've done. Goodbye, Kuvira. So, very, very interesting stuff. Just immediately this preview has so much more kind of meat, depth to it than so many of the recent comics that we've had. Like, just this preview alone is like better than like all of Turf Wars. Like, Turf Wars doesn't have anything in it anywhere near kind of this level of interest, in my opinion. So let's go through it here, specifically doing some analysis. So I suppose the thing in all of this is that what people have brought up, obviously, is when she surrendered, she basically said that she was willing to accept punishment for what she did. And that's why she surrendered, that she is willing to some degree accept punishment for what she's done. But I think what's interesting is the approach that they take here, and just, I suppose, keeping her in character throughout all of this, of she has her pride and won't allow herself to just be completely sort of taken for a ride during this trial and just be ripped apart without everything, full context on everything good and bad, I suppose bad and good, being included. So that's what they talk about. Does Empower want to humiliate me? They want to make an example out of her. And, ultimately, the crimes that they accuse her of here, all completely true. And she is guilty of all of them. The main, I suppose, really obvious ones are the fact that, yes, she did invade the United Republic, which is a nation of its own. That is a just absolute clear-cut crime. The prison camps, I suppose, are another of the big ones. We didn't get to see a ton of depth gone into on this, but obviously the wars of aggression, like how she took Zaofu, how she took the state of Yai and stuff like that, all these sort of manipulation type stuff that she did in the background, and the things that she did to make that happen, the intimidation, and then the emergency power turning over thing as well, and especially the weapons of mass destruction. She is guilty of all of that, and I ultimately think the character is willing to accept punishment for that. I suppose what we're probably going to get explored throughout this book is Kuvira, as they sort of touch on in the later preview pages here, I suppose truly accepting responsibility, I suppose, in a way understanding within herself why she went from sort of being very good intentioned and where all that stuff came from, where the hatred for people not from the Earth Kingdom came from, why she wanted to, take back the United Republic and stuff like that. Where did all of that come from on her end? And as much as she points out that she did do some things, she did have some achievements, she wants them noted here. I think what's interesting is that it's completely true here as well. But in the context of a trial here, it's kind of like, okay, we'll acknowledge that you did that. What do you want us to do? Do you want to just not get punished because you did something good? That is she trying to basically say that, the good kind of outweighs the bad, so I'm guiltless because of that? Whereas she could have accomplished all of that without needing to do the bad, and that's where I suppose the growth on her side of accepting what she's done has to be brought up. And you can see here that there's still an element of just, okay, do you really not see what the problem is on her end of just okay, yes, the big thing here is her first speech bubble there. After the fall of the Earth Queen, the kingdom fell into chaos. No one was willing to step up. I brought up order. That is the most notable thing here. The Earth Kingdom, the biggest nation in the world, was just out of control. It was completely in chaos after the end of book 3, and she did step up. She did stabilize it as much as she did it in maybe not the most ideal way, but she has given an entire nation that hope of kind of changing going forward. And I think the point she's trying to make in all of this is that, okay, the bad in a way came with the good, and can you truly, just put me away forever and more or less write it out of history that I was the one who basically allowed this to happen, allowed your elections in the Earth Kingdom to happen? And I suppose that the question really is how in depth into the trial are they going to go? In terms of, are they going to somehow reveal stuff that maybe justifies some of the bad actions, or is she just wanting the discussion to happen, the full trial to come out, all the evidence to come out, and be like, okay, yeah, I did good, I did bad, and she'll accept whatever punishment that she's given at the end, but she wants everyone to know what exactly it is that she did. But you know, we'll move on through all of this. Obviously, you get the big discussion between everyone about what's going on here, and of course, this is where they introduce the main dynamic that we've been looking for here, and that being the Kuvira Su Yin dynamic. And this is I think it's in a way like the biggest weakness with book 4 is that this dynamic should have been explored more. There's only a handful of scenes between these two characters in like the entire series, despite it basically meant to be this adopted mother-daughter relationship, yet it never really feels like that. Yet the argument between these two is basically what caused the threat and everything that happened in book 4 to happen. And this is why this is so significant here. We know that there is this pretty intense anger between both of them on both sides. Su Yin's furious at Kuvira for, you know, in her mind, I suppose, betraying everything that she gave her and all of this, whereas Kuvira's angry at Su Yin for almost like betraying her nation in not stepping up. And this is where I suppose the new stuff comes in with what she says here, of like, she apologizes, you know, I know it hurt you and your family, but you all turned your backs on me long before the Earth Empire ever existed. That's extremely telling. Now, it is coming from Kuvira in this state of mind where she is very much like thinking about herself, like, here's what I accomplished, and she's very much focused on herself, which is, you know, positive, but it's also a little bit of a negative in this situation, in that she's perhaps not thinking about her actions on other people. But again, this is where the backstory of Kuvira is something that needs to be explored. Su Yin says, that's a lie, I gave you a home, I provided for you, but I was never really part of your family, was I? And Su Yin doesn't directly respond to this. And I think this is where it's significant in terms of like, okay, Su Yin adopted Kuvira, but did Kuvira live in the same house as them? And like, was it just a direct case where she then became Opal's sister and all that sort of stuff? Because if she was brought into the family as young as would be expected, you would sort of maybe question then, like, how did the relationship with Batar Jr. come about if they were technically, you know, brother-sister borderline early on? Which maybe gives you the sense that it was a bit more distant. Maybe Kuvira lived separately from them, but it was just like Su Yin who sort of looked after her, and it was more of a like mentor-protege type relationship rather than being properly mother-daughter. And Su Yin has always just been like, oh yeah, she's my daughter, even though in reality there maybe was, from Kuvira's perspective, that distance between the two of them. It never fully felt that way as much as Su Yin was maybe saying that it was. And this is where like it's such a weird thing looking back on book 4 and having to like try and interpret how close everyone was, because like Opal is like furious at Kuvira at the start of book 4. Yeah, and like you can sort of take the angle of like, oh, like this is her sister betraying the family, or it's just someone close to the family betraying and like taking the brother away from them. Like, where is the actual anger? Is it that you were close to us and you betrayed us, or you took someone away from our family, and what is the focus, and so on? Of course, Kuvira just says, you know, I've apologized numerous times. When will you see through your anger to forgive me? So Kuvira's kind of trying to sort of take the high road here, even though like she's the one on trial here. She's the one who, you know, she's almost like in her actions, Kuvira here, like diminishing these crazy things that she did, and is trying to be like, why won't you forgive me for nearly killing your son and like capturing you and all this other sort of stuff? And, you know, and in that sense, what like Su Yin says here, you know, is, I think, spot on. You know, that's what you don't get. Being sorry isn't enough. You need to take responsibility for what you've done. Goodbye, Kuvira. And it's just, it is very much the case of, you don't get it here, do you? Like, you willingly surrendered and are willing to take this on, but you're not, there's not the remorse, there's not the full extent of her feeling that remorse here. And this is where, like, there's this kind of, like, personal distance almost between Kuvira and a lot of other characters, and that's why it's going to be very significant to see where, like, I suppose the emotion properly comes from, and I think it's going to involve really exploring, like, Kuvira's actual backstory, probably showing us some of that stuff, like what actually happened in her past in terms of her time as an orphan, where she was from before, the details around Su Yin taking her in, and how close or not close were they. And I think what is the rift between Su Yin and Kuvira, like, actually about? There's a lot they can do here, and I think it's also very telling in that final panel there. Korra's right there, she's listening to all of this, and she's sort of there, like, the entire time. Like, she's, like, pretty much the only character, like, involved in this back and forth between Kuvira and Su Yin, but she's there listening, but for, like, 2 whole pages she doesn't say a single thing. And you can see in the first panel she's looking at Kuvira, in the second panel she's looking at Su Yin. And the point that's being made here, I think, is obviously that the one thing they did get across in book 4 is that they were trying to show the similarity between Kuvira and Korra from the perspective of, I suppose, 2 ambitious women who are able to accomplish, like, so much. And with Korra out of action at the start of book 4, that's the other thing that, like, basically forced, in a way, Kuvira to step up. Korra would have done something if she was able to do, but Korra wasn't able to do that, so Kuvira stepped up. She did what she had to do, and I suppose from Kuvira's perspective, she just made some mistakes along the way, and that's where all that negative stuff came from. The problem is getting the explanation towards that. So this is where we'll go back to the description for part 1, and you can see here, but when Korra, Asami, Mako, and Bolin don't all see eye to eye as to the solution, drastic measures will need to be taken to halt a new march towards war. So I suppose the question here is, like, is that really are they referring to the character's thoughts on Kuvira and what's happening in the trial, or thoughts on the Earth Kingdom stuff? I do think it is more about Kuvira in this case. And so immediately, I think we probably have a sense, just from knowing the characters, about what position they're all going to take on Kuvira now that she's surrendered. Korra, very clearly, I think, is being placed in the position of being the one who is going to be the most, in a way, understanding of Kuvira. Understanding of, I think, Kuvira's perspective, and why she has chosen to say not guilty, and why she wants to sort of make a bit of a show out of them going through everything that she's done, both positive and negative. Because of, I suppose, how, in a way, kind of close they are and stuff like that. That Korra, I suppose, understands why Kuvira doesn't want to just go down and be remembered as the sort of tyrannical ruler, because she did accomplish something fairly important. Asami, I think, very clearly is going to take the approach of being probably one of, if not the most, negative towards Kuvira, because, of course, Kuvira killed her father. And given how important her father is to Asami, that's, I suppose, going to be a very big thing in this book. And that's probably going to be what places Korra and Asami on opposite sides of the issue. I'd be shocked if they did anything other than that. I don't know how big of a rift it's going to cause, but I think some sort of an argument between Korra and Asami will actually help to develop their relationship more. So that could be actually very interesting. Then we get into the brothers. Mako, obviously, as a police officer, and what he was involved with and so on, I think he is going to be siding more with Asami on a lot of this, of kind of being like, as the sort of cop, the lawman, very much like, no, she has to go away for what she did. And he's not going to be overly, I think, caring about what Kuvira is wanting to do in this trial. He's going to be just like, how can she say not guilty? She has done all of this. So again, they could go a slightly different road with Mako, but I think that is the most obvious, I think, way to go about this, that he would stand with, I suppose, the kind of prosecution, I suppose, in a way, of what's actually happening here. Bolin is actually one of the more interesting ones here, because he has that connection to Kuvira in that he was kind of fairly high up in the Earth Empire and supported a lot of what Kuvira was doing, but he only ever saw the kind of positive aspect of what they were doing. So if he has to give evidence in this, which I assume he is, I assume that's why Bolin is probably in his fancy outfit here, in that he probably is wearing that because he's giving evidence, because he is like a, turned good character who was part of this, but is innocent of a lot of what the Earth Empire actually did, because he was specifically not involved in a lot of the bad stuff that went down. I think, is going to be this interesting kind of middle ground, I suppose, probably between, say, a Mako and a Korra, of presenting the fact that, like, I suppose presenting, I think Bolin is probably going to present the humanitarian aspect of this, of like, we helped so many small towns in utter chaos and helped so many people from starving, getting taken out by bandits, robbed from, and so on. I wasn't aware of the bad stuff going on in the background, but the positives were the positives, I suppose, is maybe the perspective that he's going to have. I think he'll be a little harder than that on it, because obviously he did turn around and he had that kind of growth turning away from the Earth Empire. But how, I suppose, what is his opinion reflecting back on this kind of point in his life? I still feel he will probably lean more towards maybe coming across as being more like understanding of the Kuvira perspective, but maybe not as positive as maybe Korra is perhaps going to kind of come across in everything that's going on. I do wonder, like, given the pose he's on and on the front cover, like, it doesn't seem like something he'd do in the middle of a trial. So what is Bolin going to be up to here? Because he's not a cop anymore. They specifically said that at the end of Turf Wars. That's something he's kind of moved on from. So what is Bolin up to outside of whatever involvement in the trial he's going to have? That's going to be very, very interesting for me to see. And just, I suppose, in general, how all of this happens and comes about. The cover makes it look like there's some action about to happen. So what exactly is that? Is it a brief attack from Guan at the start that they have to defend from? Do people try and free Kuvira and they have to like fend that off? I'm not entirely sure, but that is, I think, just an interesting dynamic to have in the first book. And of course they're going to have to set up the elections and so on, so we may get to see a little bit of Wu and stuff like that going on. Then the other thing, I suppose, will be a lot of the other, like, Beifong characters. I'd like to see Opal get some screen time and focus, if not just to have some more kind of development between her and Bolin and their relationship. That's something I'd like to see. But actually, Batar Jr. is kind of one of the characters I would like to see a bit of focus on in this, because I think his dynamic with Kuvira may end up actually being quite important in this book. I think what they need to do, though, is, again, with some of the backstory stuff, really get across from Kuvira's perspective, how did she actually feel about him? Because I'm still very, very confused as to what I was exactly meant to take away from the show in book 4, of, like, was it just that she was using him for his, talents, or did she actually care about him? In that Kuvira obviously wanted to be part of the family and is maybe frustrated she wasn't a bigger part of it, so it suggests, at least a want for closeness with some of those people. But how much was there, I suppose, in terms of how much she cared for him? We know he loved her, that's super clear. What is left? And I think that could end up being a very interesting one if she, like, potentially sees him give evidence during the trial, or he has to, give his perspective or something like that. If they do something like that, and they, like, lock eyes or something like that, I could see something interesting happening. I don't know how, I don't really know what direction I want them to take, of just, like, would it be a cool thing if it was revealed that she actually did love him, and they maybe move to actually have that relationship sort of be something where she can maybe strive to get back together with him or something like that? Or would it be better to just note that relationship is done, we'll move on from here? Because again, the main focus is going to have to be Kuvira and Su Yin. And that dynamic is just going to be, I think, so interesting throughout all of this, to see that full perspective and, I suppose, get across what were the failings on Kuvira's part, and then were there any failings on Su Yin's part as, I suppose, the mother figure to Kuvira? Was she too, hands off with Kuvira and not kind of hands on enough to the point where Kuvira clearly feels that she wasn't really incorporated into the family as much as maybe Su Yin thinks that she made it that way? But I think that's most of what I want to talk about. Again, I'm still unsure a little bit about the exact structure of the book and how it's going to take place. I do get the impression, though, that I think a lot of this book is just going to be sort of the trial, and then by the end of the book we'll get the resolution on the trial. Now, I think the implication is that the trial maybe doesn't get to reach its full climax, I suppose, in some way. I think what they'll do is, while they're dealing with the Earth Kingdom thing, they may take a break in the trial, and they might make some sort of a decision along the lines of, like, Commander Guan is causing trouble. Kuvira, to basically, in a way, help you accomplish what you want to accomplish in this, we will allow you to assist in, like, the giving us advice for how to handle Commander Guan, because you know the most about this. And this will be seen as something good on your record, or something like that. That she will be given this, like, option to help assist in the, I suppose, in a way, finishing the job that she started, and that is fully stabilizing the Earth Kingdom. And a way to do that is by, helping us guarantee that the person who doesn't go into power is Commander Guan. And I suppose in all of this, it's going to be interesting to see of, like, is there an interesting dynamic between Guan and Kuvira? Like, when she hears that, like, he's taken charge of the Earth Empire, is she going to be like, oh no, like, he's crazy, like, this is actually pretty bad? Like, she's, from her perspective, she's going to be like, I kind of kept him under control because I was the clear leader, but he was always kind of insane with some of his, like, whatever brainwashing manipulation technology thing that's going on here. And she may be like, okay, yeah, I understand why I need to help out. And it may just be this kind of proof of, like, that everything she did was from this good perspective and good behavior, helping with this to actually allow the Earth Kingdom to elect a democratically elected ruler. That could be a very good thing for her to kind of have. And along the way, it gives her probably a chance to interact with Korra a bit more, Su Yin a lot more, and see what exactly comes out of that. I'm assuming we may get some sort of a thing where Korra stands up, I suppose, at some point in this. This might be where we see a little bit of a Team Avatar rift if it looks like it's going bad in the trial and Korra maybe decides to act out. Because it would be seen, I suppose, from Asami's perspective as being a bit of an act of betrayal, seeing Korra sort of stand up for Kuvira in some way. Again, that's at least my perspective on what I think we might see happen. And it would sort of place Korra and Kuvira in a way, like, fairly close, in terms of Korra would have to be the sort of security guard over Kuvira. And then we might see, like, Mako and, the team basically act as that guard around her at all times, and maybe Su Yin wants to be there as well. At least that's how I see it going. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are heading into Runes of the Empire Part 1. Are you as excited heading into it as I am? And what are your thoughts on a lot of what I talked about here? How do you think the trial will go down? What do you think Commander Guan's new technology is going to be about? And then especially, what do you think the main dynamic of Team Avatar is going to be, with them all sort of disagreeing on the solution to, I suppose, the Kuvira issue? But yeah, let me know about that stuff in the comments, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.